It's been 15 long years since the release of Skyrim, and people still talk about the Civil War. Who was right? Who was wrong? The online grey neckbeards have all sorts of opinions. Ulfric is a racist, the Empire's good, Stormcloak's bad, Empire bad. I think everyone is asking the wrong question. I think Bethesda accidentally recreated one of the most brutal conflicts of the 20th century. And I definitely don't see the simple rebellion Bethesda presents on the surface. I see China.
A third larger than the United States, and rich in raw materials.
To understand what I mean, we need to leave Skyrim for a minute and head to East Asia. In 1894, the Qing Empire and the rising Empire of Japan went to war, and the Chinese got absolutely smashed. The Qing lost influence over Korea, lost Taiwan, lost territory, prestige, and most importantly, lost perception over who was the dominant power in East Asia. But here's the part that caught my attention.
Just a day and a half by steamer across the Yellow Sea lay Japan.
When Japan occupied Taiwan, local resistance was so fierce that the Japanese eventually had to station over 100,000 troops on the island just to maintain control.
Machines. Their aim, the absorption of China and the fulfillment of...
Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds an awful lot like Hammerfell and the experience the Aldmeri Dominion had when fighting against the Alakir warriors in the desert. Now, eventually when the Chinese surrendered to the Japanese in the Treaty of Shimonoseki, it was a humiliating peace treaty that forced the Qing dynasty to recognize Korean independence, surrender even more territory, and pay massive reparations to Japan. The details aren't identical to Skyrim, but the broader picture should feel familiar. A once powerful empire suffers a major military defeat, loses territory, legitimacy, and signs a painful peace treaty, and it spends the next several decades desperately trying to recover while fighting a bloody rebellion. Before the comments explode, I'm not saying the leader of the rebellion, Ulfric Stormcloak, is Chairman Mao, former leader of the communist guerrilla group in China in our timeline. What I am saying is that both movements emerged from remarkably similar political environments. By the early 20th century, many Chinese people viewed the Qing dynasty, and later the Republican government, as weak, corrupt, and incapable of defending China from foreign powers. From every territorial concession, from not only Japan, but the other powers as well, like the Russians, the British, the French, etc. But every humiliating treaty, every military defeat, each one chipped away at the government's legitimacy. As that legitimacy eroded, revolutionary movements gained support. Their argument was simple. The government had failed. It had compromised with the enemy. It had lost sight of the people it was supposed to protect. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's almost exactly the argument Ulfric Stormcloak makes throughout Skyrim.
Fighting because we're done bleeding for an empire that won't bleed for us. Untold numbers of Nords died defending the empire against the Dominion. And for what? Skyrim being sold to the Thalmor so the Emperor could keep his throne. We're fighting because our own Jarls, once strong, wise men, have become fearful and blind to the people's suffering. We're fighting because Skyrim needs heroes, and there's no one else but us.
From the Stormcloak perspective, the Empire lost the Great War, and it cowered. It signed the White Gold Concordat, allowed the Thalmor to operate within Imperial territory, which we'll get into it in a second, abandoned Hammerfell, and perhaps worst of all, outlawed the worship of Talos, a literal god of humanity. And to many Nords, these weren't the actions of a strong government buying time for the next war. And Ulfric was right to say that it was a dying empire, and once enough people begin to believe their government is weak, legitimacy becomes just as important as military strength. This is where I think the pro-empire crowd gets it wrong. On paper, they're absolutely right. The Empire is stronger than the Stormcloaks. It has a professional army, it has experienced commanders, it has a battle-tested logistical system capable of deploying legions across Tamriel. And given enough time, it could probably achieve military parity with the Aldmeri Dominion. But supplies and weapons are only half the battle. And the Empire lost arguably the most important one, and that's for Skyrim itself. Think about it. The Empire has allowed an insurgency to grow for years under the justification that it needs to conserve resources for the next war. As a result, Skyrim is effectively being held together by a single legion under the man named General Tullius. Or, you could draw the comparison with Chiang Kai-shek. Meanwhile, the Thalmor are operating freely throughout Imperial territory. They are arresting citizens, conducting intelligence operations, manipulating political events, and maintaining a physical presence in Skyrim itself. If an enemy intelligence service has spent an entire generation embedding itself in your country, influencing your politics, and targeting your citizens, you have been utterly compromised. And that's even before we talk about Northwatch Keep. Think about how insane this situation actually is. The Empire's primary geopolitical rival maintains a fortified military installation on Skyrim's coastline, while Imperial authorities look the other way. If you talk to General Tullius about this, he actually tells you to essentially mind your own business and don't talk about it.
The Thalmor. Do you have any idea what you're asking? I'm sorry, that's just not possible. It would cause far too many problems. Go on, get out of here.
Imagine Japanese intelligence agents arresting Chinese citizens under the authority of a peace treaty. The public would view this as proof that the government surrendered its sovereignty. And that's exactly what's happening in Skyrim. At this point, it doesn't even matter if the Empire wins the Civil War. Even if Tullius crushes the Stormcloaks, the underlying problem remains. The resentment remains. The Thalmor remain. The legitimacy crisis remains, which, by the way, spoiler alert, if you join the Dark Brotherhood, you get to assassinate the Emperor. No matter which option you choose, if the Empire wins in Skyrim, which I think Bethesda might make it canon that the Dark Brotherhood does kill the Emperor, there is no way in hell that the Elder Scrolls 6 you are going to see the Empire. The succession and legitimacy crisis that would come out of that assassination would destroy the Empire in what is already going through an existential crisis. Which is why politically it's so problematic if the Empire wins the Civil War and they stay in Skyrim, because if they fail to kick out the Dominion, if they let intelligence operations continue to run, and they let the Aldmeri Dominion continue to infect Skyrim, they can prepare as much as they want. There is no way that the Dominion doesn't take advantage of the intel network that they've built for decades, preparing exactly for that moment to destroy the Empire. If the Stormcloaks win the Civil War, at least the Empire would not need to worry about the Thalmor presence in Skyrim, because the Stormcloaks, assumingly, would already be kicking the Thalmor out of Skyrim. In a perfect world, building my own lore here, if the Stormcloaks do win, maybe the Empire could say, hey, you know what? We could actually fund the Stormcloaks, get them to kick the Dominion out of Skyrim, and kind of create this alliance, this united front. Kind of like what happened in real life with the nationalists and communists in China. They formed a united front to fight the Japanese in the next war. I'm very confident that this is what Bethesda is alluding to, because if you play as the Empire, or you play as the Stormcloaks, and you win their respective side in the Civil War, they will make a comment. There are camps in the mountains, and the enemy is still out there. Keep fighting. Either we have an example right now with Skyrim and how art imitates life, or Bethesda was clearly inspired by the Chinese Civil War. If Chinese history tells us anything, it actually gives us a glimpse into the Elder Scrolls 6. The side you pick in the Civil War will not win. It will either only end in a total Aldmeri victory, or a united human front with a broken empire that I have a feeling we won't be seeing in the next Elder Scrolls.